Hey, I'm Dan Diaz with weFooz, Human Foosball, and you are listening to WHOA GNV podcast, coming to you from Gainesville, Florida.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the WHOA GNV podcast, the podcast bringing you businesses and individuals that make you go, whoa!
Oh,
Yeah!
He was on it. He was ready.
He is ready to go. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce him. And just because, that's just going to mix things up, and he's already, whoaing.
He's ready.
To go. Today on the show, we have Danilo Diaz of weFooz, Human Foosball, a business that plays human foosball to build camaraderie, promote fitness, and support great causes. And tomorrow, November 26th, is his birthday.
Whoa!
Happy birthday.
What's up, man?
Hey, man, that's great. I'm really honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, dude.
Really excited.
Yeah.
The day before my birthday.
Drinking mimosas on his birthday.
Yep.
It's,
Yes. I've
8 o'clock in the
been
morning.
waiting all year long for my birthday just so that I could be here.
Be
so
here on
thank
the
you very much.
podcast and drink mimosas. Outstanding.
That's awesome, man. Well, happy birthday. Welcome to our show. We're going to dive into your story in just a little bit. But before we do, I want to wish everybody a wonderful Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving week. This is episode 81. Can you believe that we're 81 episodes in? Super excited. I need to introduce you because
They know who I am.
I know they do, but I read this intro this morning.
Oh, what do we
and
got?
It's epic. So hold on.
What do you got?
This podcast is just like a game for me now. I'm your host, Collin Austin, and my co-host is like a turkey on Thanksgiving, seasoned, dependable, and a little dry. The gravy to my mashed potatoes, Michael Dees.
Oh, Rebecca.
What's up, man?
Not much, man. That was good. Maybe a little rye, too, but...
I like the little dry part. That was funny. Yeah, dude, you're a pescatarian. What do you eat on Thanksgiving?
that feels like a call-out. It's actually it'll be the first Thanksgiving that I am pescatarian after being vegetarian for 7 years. So it's mostly about the sides for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite side?
My favorite side is a toss-up probably between the cornbread dressing, the stuffing, and we always do swamp cabbage, which is like hearts of palm. It's like a Florida type thing, and I only get that around Thanksgiving. So how about you? What's your favorite?
Probably the dressing as well. Yeah, but I definitely like the sweet potatoes with the marshmallow on it.
That seems like you. Yeah.
I don't know. I just like it. It's the best.
It's like dessert, but it's not quite dessert.
Yeah, man. So what are you thankful for?
Dude, I'm thankful for so much. I try to stay grounded, stay humble all the time, but I'm thankful mostly for my business family, for this podcast, for the team that I have that helps me get through every day. I mean, honestly, it's been a little bit of a challenging year with a couple changes and stuff like that we've undergone at New Scooters, and so just the team that I have that's kind of banded together and helped inspire me to pull them through and pull us all through is definitely been rewarding and thankful and keeps me coming.
Yeah.
So how about you?
I'm thankful for all of the same things, but just the opportunity, man. Just the opportunity that, to serve this community and to be able to build a lot of relationships within this community. It's funny, I was speaking last Friday, and I was speaking to a group of realtors at GATCAR, and it's easy. I think it's easy, when it comes to purpose and stuff. It's easy to be our purpose is to sell scooters to college students,
right,
or service scooters for college students. And it's easy for realtors to get wrapped up in I have to sell a piece of property, right? And in my mind, I'm like, okay, are you selling a piece of property, or are you do you have greater purpose? Are you introducing somebody to our community for the very first time and really showing them what makes Gainesville so awesome? So, I'm thankful for this community, for the opportunities that I have as an entrepreneur within this community, and the opportunity just to have an impact and be able to show up and work with the people that I love every single day, and then to have the friends and family that back it up every single day and put up with the long hours
Sure.
and sacrifice, dad not being at home sometimes in order to, live out this dream. So it's pretty awesome. So I'm thankful for all of that. That's a lot though.
Yeah. No, it is a lot, but it's always,
important.
This time of year, it's always nice to reflect on that kind of stuff because maybe we don't do it often enough. But also thankful for Dan Mullen and Gator football.
Yeah.
They make it fun this time of year whenever they're doing well. So shout out to them.
Got Florida State this weekend.
Yeah.
So hopefully
it goes like it should go.
Right. You would think it would, but that game.
That's always the fun thing about Thanksgiving too, is the in-state rivalries. My brother's got 2 degrees from Florida State, and he's a big trash talker. He's not doing so much this time of year, but
right.
Yeah, it's always nice to get around the dinner table and have those little banters and stuff.
Yeah. So Dan, what are you thankful for?
Yeah, this is actually really funny to be on this side of the mic because I've been listening to pretty much every single podcast, and to just see you guys talk to each other like in front of me, it's just
weird, right? Because while we're talking, the camera's on us, and so the guest is like there waiting for us to introduce them and get into their stories.
Right, but not only that, but I'm thinking because I've been listening to you guys for almost 76 podcasts, well over 70 podcasts at this point, and
that's crazy. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and so it's just kind of fun to be here and to see this. But I'm thankful to actually be here for this opportunity. That's one thing that I'm thankful for. You always bringing up Gainesville, but so Gainesville brings an opportunity to be in something like this. So it's pretty cool. My family, we've been going through some interesting times, but I think we're really sticking together. So I'm really thankful for that.
Cool, man.
And yeah, this Thanksgiving should be fun.
Awesome. And I'm thankful for this new hat.
Oh, yeah.
Dan brought me a new hat. You guys check this out. Boom. You got the right one. The buckle. You said Teresa.
Yeah. So Teresa from Logo Kick, shout out to her. I'm like, okay, so what kind of hat is the one that Collin wears? And
you see, it didn't take him any time. He's got to have the corners of the hat touch each other.
Get it.
Yeah. So for anybody who's listening who's watching this, that hat took 5 minutes to get to that point. Yeah. With Collin
he sat on it a little bit, jumped, But that's the look. You're right. It's the Collin brand, which is important because you've just been recognized as an influencer in a bingo game, right?
Dude, that was so random. I don't know if you guys have seen this. We need to make note. We'll link it up somewhere. Maybe put it on the web. I don't know. Wherever we can put it on social media or somewhere. But James found it last night in Reddit, you said? In Reddit.
That's crazy. I woke up to it this morning.
I know. And I'm like looking at this thing, even trying to understand what it was, and then I start looking at all the little bingo squares, and then it had scooters on there as one of the bingo squares.
Had this podcast.
Hold on, what did it say? What was the title?
It was like Comeback City or something.
Somebody looked it up, but basically I was on there.
Yeah, you were as an influencer with
campaign. And then the podcast, it said indie
radio with a cult following or something.
Yeah. I was like, what? This is hilarious. But what was the title?
Cities making a comeback bingo.
Cities making a comeback bingo, and it had a whole bunch of squares, and I was on one, the podcast was on one, and Scooters was on one, and then there was several others, of course. But I was like, oh my gosh, I'm honored to be included on City Bingo. This is great. So, and I don't know if you saw this, but I thought this was really, really cool. So I wanted to take a minute to mention it. But we were just recently mentioned in the Amazon Alexa rank blog.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I was linking this to everybody I knew yesterday when I saw it.
Did you? Okay, so
cool.
It said the article was titled "Effective Marketing Strategies in 2020 all have these elements," and I'll just read the segment really fast because I think it was really cool. It said one of the strategies they discussed was creating branded entertainment. This is what the article says. It says, there's an opportunity for branded entertainment on a much more attainable scale. Think of podcasts and do-it-yourself YouTube videos, both of which have been embraced by many small business owners. Some are even combining the two to give audiences double the options for tuning in. Collin Austin of Gainesville, Florida, built his first local business selling scooters into one of the largest scooter dealerships in the United States. Now he has launched his own media production company, Repaint the Wall, which he describes as an unagency, and runs a popular popular podcast called Whoa GNV.
Shout out.
He interviews members of the community on his podcast, which he also makes available in video format. The beauty of branded entertainment is that it brings your values to life. It shows your personality. It helps people decide if they really like you, all before you've asked them to buy anything. So when it comes time for them to make that choice, you already have a foundation of trust. I thought that was pretty cool. Shout out to Lisa Banks for thinking of me and that and making that happen.
Awesome.
But that was like really, really cool, really special. And I was like, dang, that's awesome.
Another thing to be thankful for.
Yeah, and I like the part where it says it helps people decide if they really like you all before you've asked them to buy anything. I'm like, man, I hope you guys like us.
Or at least can tolerate us enough.
Yeah,
To,
you know. So anyway, I know that was a lot of pregame stuff before we get into our discussion here with Dan, but I'm amped for this, and this is just a business that like I've seen all over the place that have you gotten to do it?
I haven't done it, but I know you have.
Okay, I've done it with, we did with my kids out at our church one time, and I destroyed their faces.
Not actually.
Not that I'm competitive or anything, but literally like crushed them. And yeah, man, it's really, really cool. So, Dan, I know that you've seen 70 something episodes of our show. It's exciting to have you here. We like to dive in the story. Tell us your story.
All right, thank you. By the way, so as Collin destroyed his kid's face, don't worry that we intentionally made our balls made out of like a foam. It's a very good I went through 15 different balls to get to the one that we have now.
Okay.
So that it
make it safe?
so that it could destroy a kid's
Safe for
face
kids' faces.
safely.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's good. That's
So
important.
it bounces off their faces and they
Yes.
can still be standing at
Yes. At one point, they had masks and stuff. But anyway, so this whole Human Foosball thing started about 5 years ago. I was sitting in my kitchen, just scrolling through Facebook, and I saw this video of a bunch of old people playing a version of this game. I don't know if it was a backyard. I don't know what it was. And I'm like, damn, this looks fun. I want to play this thing. My dad was living with me at the time, and we're like, let's build one of these for a backyard. We never built for a backyard, but I was part of an international organization. It's called International Friendship, and they reach out to people who English is second language, like myself, to help them to kind of get acquainted to the town, and they use the Bible to learn English and all that stuff. And I'm like, there's a fall festival coming up. How about I'll provide the materials, I'll volunteer the hours to build this thing. I'm gonna bring this game if you guys are okay with it. The funny thing is they weren't so into it because a lot of the students that were part of the organization are Chinese, and there was a conflict between space because of badminton. We figured out a way to make it happen, and this game, the badminton was empty and Human Foosball was full. People were playing this thing and people had a really, really good time the whole time. And I'm like, this is interesting. Around the same time, I had friends who were struggling with cancer and, pay the bills and all that stuff. So I'm like, what if we do a fundraiser game with this fundraiser tournament with this game that we're kind of inventing for you guys? And sure enough, we did it and people loved it. And I did a bunch of those, and eventually I did some research, and I'm like, there are people playing this thing all over the U.S. It was not really big, but there are more people playing in other places. But pretty much everybody who's playing, they did what I did. You gotta figure out how to build this thing, and you gotta figure out the game rules. You gotta figure everything out. And I'm like, what if I built it and I sold the equipment? So that's kind of how the idea for the business started. And the other part of that was, what if I organize all these people who are playing this into like a national league? What if you can make a new sport? So that's kind of how the whole idea for a business started. So the game didn't start as a business. It started just, let's play this and then let me help people. But then eventually that was the idea that triggered to make it into what today is weFooz. Though along the way, and I'm sure we're going to get into this later, but I had there were some bumps on the road, and I ended up shifting to just kind of do kind of what we're doing now, which is just events right here in Gainesville, kind of a proof of concept. And once we get to a point that it makes sense, then we can try to start replicating or something like that. But the idea for the business started with, let's sell the equipment and create leagues.
Dang. So, I mean, where was the hiccup with that? I mean, is the equipment just super hard to manufacture, or?
Yeah, well, I have zero experience in, I was going to say manufacturing, but really in business. My background is all, I just kind of help people. Like the work that I've done has been some graphic design work and stuff like that, but nothing that like was business related. And I think I focused too much on the wrong thing. So if I were to go back and tell myself, hey, like, let's start this over, I would probably say, like, just get your it's as simple the simplest MVP and get this thing to run. I spent too much time focusing on details and stuff like that, and again, and then there's just the part that if I had a closer mentor, maybe I was seeing one of your posts on social media recently and it's talking about being a mentor, and I'm like, if I had one of those early on, I probably would have been a different place today. But it's just I could never push it away to the point that I would start selling it. So like, and I never was comfortable enough with equipment. My goal was 2 people set it up in 30 minutes, and it was taking us 3 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you started it when, in 16?
The business started in 16, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
but like that,
but
that first event was
2014, actually.
2014.
Yeah. So
like,
it's been a long time.
From the time that happened to actually starting a business, it was a couple years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess in 2016 when you decided to turn this into a business, like what were the first steps? Like what were the things that were going through your mind? I mean, were you just going out and trying to get more of the events at that time? Right. Or were you like, all right, like who was your customer, I guess?
Right.
Yeah,
and that was, I went too hard after the end goal, before I got, which was the National Human Foosball League.
Okay.
And I was pursuing that without creating a little community, like with who were playing. So my goal was I was all focused on that. Anything that did not work like that, it was just this is not what I want to do. And as a matter of fact, to be completely honest, I never intended to do the, let me call it the rental, like the bounce house-ish kind of thing, that I come set up for an event, we have some fun, and it was never meant to just be in one place like it is now. So I try to create leagues, and maybe marketing wasn't. I need to stop and really put things together. But marketing, we didn't push quite right. I burned my go-to method was, let me burn through my friends and help, get them to help me. But I had already burned them for long enough before even like the business started. So by the time that I started going that route, I didn't have, people were kind of done with it. People were just helping, and I didn't have an experience with hiring staff and all of that stuff. So I would say that one of the biggest things that hurt it going to where it was going to go was not hiring the people, and to kind of push things to go to where you need to go. It was just that one-man show, and I was in charge of manufacturing, like literally with a saw in hand, and all of that stuff, and like putting everything together. I cannot weld, but just about everything else these two hands touched. And from design to putting things together and stuff like that.
For people who are listening, who might not know what this is, you really need to go and just like Google it and look at a picture. Maybe we can throw a picture up so we can show.
Tell me about it. How many people play at a time?
Yeah, I just realized. Yeah, as you're asking, I was like, wait, maybe people have no idea what the heck.
Yeah,
this is.
It is like a foosball table, but for humans.
Right,
so without getting into the minutia of the rules, so like I'm imagining this huge like open space, and then you're stationary essentially.
Yeah. So the gist of it is you're in an enclosure, so there are walls all around. So the size is roughly 20 by 35 feet, and then there are pipes that go across, and in those pipes there are sleeves that you hold on to, and those slide together, side to side. So you're holding on to something, and you can only move left and right. Yeah. Yes. And if you have 2 to 3 people in the same role as you, all of you got to move together. So, because you're all holding on to the same pipes, the same sleeve. And then you throw a soccer ball in there, and you're trying to kick the ball in the goal, pass the ball and whatnot. But
you got to stay holding onto your sleeve, onto the bar, just like if you were playing foosball.
You don't get to actually like spin around, right?
Well, I actually have done that.
Upgrades.
Because I'm the guy that plays foosball, and I'm like spinning the handles,
Yeah. So just like foosball, you have, on one side you have the goalie, it's facing like, his team, and then the other team is facing the other way. So the other offense is in front of the goalie, and then behind that guy, or behind that row, you have your team's midfield, which is facing the goal that you're attacking. So people are just alternating the direction they're looking at. And on the spinning thing, my equipment, I built it so that 600 pounds, so 3 people who are 200 pounds can easily just hang on it and and not
That's
break
crazy.
the thing.
Yeah.
So
how many people are playing at once?
we can have so a typical game is between 5 and 8. 6, 7 is like the ideal number.
Each side, right?
Each side, yeah. So 12 to 14 is the ideal number, but we can have all the way from 6 total, so 3 on a side. With a new format that I've developed. So essentially, a team only has 2 roles. So you have the goalie and the offense. You don't have the midfield. With that, you can have 3, and it's fun. You could have 2, but it's just not fun. The goalie and offense. You kind of want to have more than 1 person per role, because that's really what makes the game fun. When you like dragging people with you.
Yeah.
So all the way from 3 on a side to 8 on a side. So 6 to 16 total is the range, depending on the group that you depending on the size of your group and how many games you guys want to play and all that stuff.
I want to be like transparent with our audience, right? And I know that you were a little hesitant about the amount of value that you could bring to our audience, and I told you, I'm like, dude, don't worry about it, because I just know that once we start diving into your story, that there's going to be a lot of lessons, right? And I want that to be a lesson in itself. Like, if people get invited to the podcast, like come on and like tell your truth, tell your story, And I'm sitting here listening, and I'm like thinking about the lessons that you've already brought to the table. I've written them down. 1, like, create community, right? Like, you had this big vision, and sure, like you want to go from 0 to 100 so fast, but the truth is, lesson number 2, we got to be patient. We got to stay focused, stay determined. But like, going back to lesson 1, hey, you got to create community. You already talked about the importance of having a mentor. A mentor would be great, right? So that way you could learn so I'm like sitting here in marketing, you're like, I could have marketed this better. I'm just like thinking to myself, dude, there's going to be so many lessons right here, just through this. So, and I know that, you told me that you're going through a little bit of a transition, a little bit of struggle, so talk to me about that. Like where's the business at today? What are the challenges that you're facing? And let's see what we can do to help.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, as you brought it up, I was really reluctant to be here because it's like, this is not very successful right now. So what are people gonna get out of this? Like why? So I'm hoping that just in being able to tell about my screw ups, someone will be able to be like, okay, I can learn something.
Yeah, and I know it's not necessarily fun for people to get on here and like talk about the screw ups, and I often reflect even to like, when we had Kristen Kozelski on and she talked about depression and like some of the guys, this is like real life. And like the thing is, and whether you know this or not, like I know that so many of the businessmen and women that are listening to this podcast, we've all been through some challenge or struggle. I know it's nice to post up, oh my gosh, we were just featured on the Alexa blog this week. I know, like don't get me wrong, like I think everybody wants to, of course, like I want to show the great stuff that's happening, and I'm going to do that way more often than I'm going to talk about like the terrible things that are happening within my business, right? But and that's just the truth. Like I actually feel like more than others, I actually will post some of the negative and the challenge and the hardships. But one of the things I definitely want to make sure that this podcast does is being realistic to what is entrepreneurship, because I do not want everybody to think that is this great and glorious picture. I love it, and I know people who are true entrepreneurs love it, but it's hard as hell. Like it's hard. It's the most challenging but most rewarding thing I've ever done in my entire life, right? So I just want people, I just know that so many people can, I can start listing off my failures right now, you know what I mean? And everybody can completely empathize with it because we all go through it. And if any entrepreneur is like, oh no, like we went, from 0 to 100 and been super successful and have had no hardships along the way, they're full of
Exactly, yeah.
They're lying.
But it's just easier to do that once you went over it. I keep waiting, like, okay, let me go over this hump, and then I'm gonna go share with people. So it's just easier like that than while you're still in the middle. While it's still in the middle of it, it's much more vulnerable. And for people who don't like to be vulnerable to start with, it just makes it interesting.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, but I appreciate. I'm sure that I hope that someone who's going through, something similar, they can get something out of this. So I'm sure they will. Yeah.
So tell us about it, man.
Yeah. So part of what's going on now is, an interesting thing is I officially went into weFooz on June 1st, 2016. June 2nd, 2016. My second daughter was born. So Lily, she's 3 now. And so it's been like very interesting, that to become, to have that second child at the same time that this is going on. So that has been part of the challenge, being a dad and all that stuff, which I see people who are 80 years old, who are uber successful, and you say, what's something that you regretted in life? And it's like, I didn't spend more time with my family. And I hear this over and over again. I'm like, I'm not gonna let that be, I'm not gonna let that's not gonna be my reality. Mm-hmm. So that has been, so I would say like just the time with family has been something that sometimes is tough to balance. But I pretty much never, so I paid myself $900 in 3 years. And I spent way over, probably 100 times that in that same amount of time. So, eventually just kind of, we ran out of, I wouldn't say we ran out of, I'm not in debt, thank God. Like and that maybe was part of my one of the mistakes, that I never got a loan to like really, do this. So, but it's been, the whole thing, I probably have now on the credit card has like $800, or a couple $1,000. it's nothing. If I were to say this is over, I could pay it off and go away without a debt. So so I would say that's part of it. That eventually you grind and you grind and you grind and you don't see, and your wife is not seeing money coming in, and here I am like. As much as I said, I want to give time to my kids and stuff. If you're trying to start a business, I mean, you will miss things. And here I am missing this, missing that, and there's no money coming in. So that became a point of conflict. So earlier this year, I went back to I went back to get a job, and more recently, the way things are now is, and I don't know how bad this is to say in public, but anyway, I'll say it anyway. So the Human Foosball is now on I would call it like a maintenance mode, just like marinating. So the way it is if anybody contacts me, I'm going to check the calendar, and if it's open, it's game on. Otherwise, I'm not going too hard after it anymore, the way it is right now.
It's like a side hustle now.
Yeah. So, and I'm just taking a soft break from it.
Did you ever think about taking on a partner or anything?
I did, and I have, and that's the other thing that it would have been different, I believe, had I had the partner. And I don't know, how do you find a partner? Like, I don't know. I've without college connections and stuff. Because if you go to college here, with your classmates, you always have the connection. Hey, the two of us have this thing going on. My connections have all been in the nonprofit, church, and all that stuff sector, and people were just, they're like me, money is evil, So that was more my circle, and yes. So I started this, and as I look back, this has been a glorified hobby, not necessarily a business, because of just that. I want to use this thing to help, So it started to help people, and the whole thing about the profits and whatnot going through a cause, it's there, but it's really coming out of my pocket, So like, okay, so. Because we have money set aside for that. So it's just that my whole mentality has been, growing up has been, I was like a church rat, a church, cockroach, like everything. You could see me almost every day of the week in there between activities. I was part of theater, dance, mime, choir. Like I was part of all kinds of stuff growing up until pretty old, actually. So that has been my circle this whole time. And when I stepped out of that, everything just became very foreign to me. I thought that I thought by now I was going to be a full-time missionary, like in the jungles of Ghana or something like that, So that's kind of where I thought life I would be now. So all that to say that the business world is even though I've been in it for a couple of years, it's still a little bit, new to me, if you will, because I didn't grow up like trading things, anything like that. So
there's so many places to dive in, right? Because there's just a million things that I could talk about, but I kind of want to circle back to the partnership stuff, because I think, it's funny you asked like, how do you find a partner? And I think it's a great question. I'm thinking about our audience. Somebody's out there thinking about how to find a partner. And I'm sure there's a multitude of different ways, but if I was going to do this, I would try I would seek out somebody who has the complete opposite skill set that I have, right? That, where I'm like, if I'm like the best salesperson, then I want somebody who is like really, my strength, like I'm not the most organized person on the planet. Like, having somebody who does the administrative side, that kind of stuff. I've talked about it multiple times before. Like that's that's what I would want, somebody who's really focused on that. If you're strong at numbers, then having somebody who's focused on, the team building or like whatever it is, just opposite strengths, I think is key. And I think that you can, for those of you that are listening, like how to find a partner, I would say just networking. I mean, getting out and really trying to build as many relationships as you can through whether it's chamber events or startup GNV that like they put on a ton of events and are encouraging these like just these startup rallies, if you will, startup weekends and all these kind of things, which I think are a great place just to build relationships and maybe find a co-founder. So I think that's an interesting thing, because I start to wonder, I'm like, all right, like what if you did have a partner in this? Like this is a great idea. Where do you think you're not the strongest? I mean, were you looking at these numbers? Because I mean, when I hear you say you took $900 home over 3 years, I'm like, ouch, like that definitely that's hard. And I know that your wife is probably like your poor wife, so
just put up with a lot. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and shout out to all the wives and husbands for that matter, that have a spouse as an entrepreneur, because I always tell people that I'm blessed that Shannon knew me, like was dating me before I started the business, because I think that's one of that's one of the key reasons why I've been so successful, is that she's been there from the very, very, very beginning and has seen me go through, the hell of a roller coaster this has been. So shout out to all the spouses out there.
Yes, absolutely. So the July month when we had all the spouses together, that was like, that's probably very interesting to to have a business with your spouse.
Oh yeah. Shannon would never work with me.
Neither would Heidi. Yeah, we've tried. So Heidi's my wife, and we've tried, and we're not business compatible.
So were you looking and studying the numbers? I mean, what was going through your mind after year one? Like how much had you done in sales, and how much, was there any profit?
Yes. So my I'd say my strength and the things that excite me and get me going is the creating side of things. So the creating the product, creating the game, creating the league, creating the tournament, doing all of that. I was just focused on that, way too much probably, and not looking too much at numbers. So there you go. So to say like, what a partner. So the I would say that this we've made something that's a lot of fun. Like people we had some games at Luby, Batfest. Well, I was gonna say this weekend, but 4 weeks ago, whatever. And we started. So the festival started at 10 a.m. and at 5, and we had our first game right around 10. And it was back to back until 5, like non-stop. We had no break. I was on the mic, and because I do a little bit of a game calling during the games.
That's great.
I don't think you did. I don't think I did that. No, because at Family Church when you played, it was a very different way that I set up. I pretty much never set up and walk away. That's not what I do. So we're there with the mic doing like a play-by-play, and making fun of people and all that stuff, and people, it's so energizing to be there, and then people are laughing and people are shouting. It's really cool. But anyway, so we have a product like people. It's a lot of fun. It's a ton of fun. Both for the people who are playing and for the people who are watching.
Yeah.
And we bring music and all of the stuff.
So did you charge for that event?
For a family, I did.
I did. The Bat Fest that you're talking about?
For the somewhat.
Okay.
We started with them without. So this was. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this was the third year, and the first year we didn't charge at all, and then last year charged a little bit, and then this year a little bit again. So it was kind of sponsorship kind of thing.
Okay.
Which I'm not supposed to be doing anymore. But here I am, still doing somewhat free events.
I know. And, it's super hard because I know that you have such a giving heart. You know what I mean? And I've seen that in you since the day that I met you. And I know, and I also know like that there's a ton of deserving causes, right? And it's hard because it's a balance, right? Like I could give away my dealership to support, a cause, right? But if I do that, then like I won't have anything next year to give or the year after. And so it's a balance. And, I love the nonprofits and the all the just the heartfelt organizations that are doing incredible things. But, I just want you to, I want you to be able to provide for a lot longer. You know what I mean? And if you're always doing events at no cost, it's a very difficult thing to do. And I also know that like, if you do it once, they're going to come back again and again and again and again. Like, I don't want like the nonprofits like looking at me being like, Collin, what are you talking? Because we give so much. I give so much of my time. I'm doing an event tomorrow, giving my time, whether it's time, money, products, like, we do it so much, but it's definitely a balance. And I think that's where, as an entrepreneur, you definitely have to like budget. You have to look at those numbers and really set an amount, because this is how big I know your heart is like I'm looking here and I'm like, you donate 10% of your revenue to charity and cancer research.
25%.
Right? Huh? 25%
of profits.
Okay, so this says 10%. So you said
Where'd you find that?
I don't know.
Your link on the LinkedIn page.
It was on LinkedIn. So,
Seriously? Oops.
Okay, so
Update.
so 25%. So maybe you should bring it back down to 10%.
Maybe it's not sounding so bad.
I'm just look.
On the LinkedIn?
Yeah, the weFooz.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No, you're good.
I'm like,
you're good, man.
How did I let that slip? Okay.
And I love that. I love that your heart's that big. I mean, because I feel like I'm very much the same way. Like we're constantly looking at and support several different organizations. We're doing something for.
Well, it's hard to say no. I mean, we get approached by so many. I daily inboxes full of solicitations for fundraising events, student groups, safety initiatives, all kinds of stuff. And it's just like, if you say yes to everybody, you've got nothing left. Right. You got a team to support. You got whatever, bills to pay. And it just gets so hard because you've got to say no to somebody. And it's not that you don't believe in their cause or believe in them as a person or want to help their business. And that's why I started saying, okay, let me give you time. I can't give you money. I can't give you product, but I'm happy to give you time if I can. But just anything, if it's volunteer hours to help you set up or what, just.
And they know that. They understand that, right? So, but I think what's super hard is saying no. Right? Like that's what's so hard. And I mean, the fact that, you're like 25% of the revenue is going to these causes. I mean, you have nothing left. You have nothing left for yourself, for your family.
Yeah,
or to keep the business. Keep the business going.
Yeah, which again, the money was not even coming from the business necessarily. Like it was more of a kind of, but it was 10% of revenue, and I'm like, well, this thing is, I don't know how profitable this is, so. I'm going to move 25% of profits.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different way to look at it.
Yeah. My point being was that you have a big heart and you're doing these things.
Yeah.
You're doing this because of how generous you are, and I don't want you to continue to be super generous, but
be more selfish.
But I want you to be in business. Right. You know what I mean? And if you end up giving the business away, like, you're not going to have that opportunity anymore in the future.
Right.
So it's just a balance.
Having said that, I haven't done quite as much of that this year. This year, in a way, the business was pretty much profitable, for the first time, though there was not a lot of income, but because I just removed a ton of expenses. The income was roughly the same, but the expenses, went away because I stopped inventing things. I stopped coming up with new crap, and giving up so many. So like in the first year, I did events in which not only did I not get paid, but I paid to be there, and then I paid staff on top of that. So I'm learning my lesson. I'm a little bit slow, but I'm learning.
Well, and I feel
more
like
selfish.
I understand that, especially with like expenses and stuff, like cutting back on expenses. I think that's a great way to stop any bleeding. Right. You got holes in a boat, like that's a great way of plugging them up. But like the one thing that I know is that sales, like the income, that's the insurance for me. I'm like, we'll be in business as long as we continue to sell, right, whether it's our services, our products, so like that's such an important piece. And I think a lot of times people just naturally go to the expenses. All right, where can we cut back? Where can we cut back? Where can we cut back? I'm like, okay, where can we make more money? Where can we make more money? Where can we make more money?
Right. No, absolutely.
And I think that's an important like thought process. For me, I'm sitting here thinking, I think this is just such a great lesson for so many people, and I want to like if this is something that you really want to see continue for a very long time, like I really want to use this platform as an opportunity to help you, whether that is finding a partner, whether that is finding a mentor. I talked about mentorship. And a lot of people ask the same thing about mentorship. How do I find a partner? How do I find a mentor? I think it's very much the same way. Like finding somebody who has done it and asking.
I was gonna say, it starts with the ask a lot of times. Is that people have to know that you're looking for that, or you have to be able to walk up to somebody and say, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. Would you have any interest in doing it, or whatever that may be?
I got an email last night from a couple of college students who are starting a business, and they said that they want to meet with as many entrepreneurs as they can before they pitch out of this competition, and just seek feedback and everything. And it was like, so, we just want to know, can we take you out to coffee? Can we take you out to lunch? We'd really appreciate your time if you can make it. If not, completely understand. I mean, I'm sure that they're sending that email to 1,000 people. I'm the one that's going to say yes. You know what I mean? And like, not everybody's going to. And I think it's very much the same way with mentorship is actively asking and seeking. So I guess like, let's have that conversation a little bit. Like, okay. Do you want to see this thing like live on, or do you want it to just be a side hustle? Oh. Do you want a partner? Do you what's going through your mind?
So
as we prepare to go into 2020?
Yeah. So on. All right. Let me answer this in two parts. So, what we're doing now is something I never wanted to do. Like to become a glorified bounce house. I never wanted to be what we are now. So, and I think that's part of what has sucked out the energy out of me, because I'm like, I don't want to be doing this
because you're not passionate about it.
This bounce house thing.
Sure.
Nothing against people who have bounce houses. Like it's great. You probably make good money with it. We talked about a little. We chatted about the Rob Kiyosaki cash flow quadrant.
Yep.
And in that book, Rob Kiyosaki says that 10% of the 90% of the business will fail in the first 5 years because it runs out of money, and then out of the remaining 10%, 90% of those will fail within the next 5 years because you run out of energy, run out of gas, kind of thing. And I'm like, I think I could kind of say that I survived the money thing, but I'm like, the energy it's kind of what's not there. So this break that I'm taking, this soft break, is so that I can find that energy again, the drive to get this thing to go back to, let's become essentially like a spike ball. Have you guys played spike ball?
Yeah.
Have you seen that? So I think that we started about the same time. very different thing because the spike ball is it's $50 to buy a set, but it's only 4 people, and there are some things that Human Foosball is better than spike balls, and obviously there are a lot of things that spike ball is better than Human Foosball. I don't know if I jumble all that. Anyway.
Have you thought about contacting like the guys who created Spike Ball?
Yeah,
I mean, because their big thing, like they do the tournaments, right? They built a community.
Yes.
Like, have you thought about reaching out to somebody like that and say, hey, like I would love to pick your brain? I mean, they might say no. They might have the time.
It's way overdue for me to do that. I thought about it, but I never actually acted on it. So shame on you. Shame on me for that. But
no, it's not shame on you. But I think it is a very important lesson for our entire audience. Like, you are not going to get unless you ask. I mean, right, John Dar said that even, you know, and he's like, you have to ask. You have to ask for the business. You have to ask, like.
Who was your guest here who kind of did the same thing? Like, she's like, I deserve this award.
Kim.
Oh yeah. Kim Kalp.
Yeah, there you go. So
she talks one of her things is talking about like raise your hand.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
I sent him a message after that. I was like, I learned a lot from that podcast, from that episode. So whatever number it was, maybe you can throw it on the screen so that people can listen to it.
Yeah, no, it's a good episode. So, but you have to be willing to like. It's funny, Jia Zhang, who is somebody that I have had the opportunity to connect with through social media. I haven't met him in person, but we've had a couple conversations, and you know, he created a book that was all about rejection, and like he feared the rejection, and he went through basically all of it. He basically created this plan to become rejection proof. And was like, I'm just gonna go up and ask people things in order to get a no. He's like, oh, so I saw a police officer and was like, hey, can I like sit in your car and like turn the siren on? And like expecting to get a no, and then would get like a yes. And then went into like a Krispy Kreme donuts, and like this is like a very viral video on the internet, and said, hey, it was like during the Olympic time, said, hey, like when you give me my donuts, can you like make them look like the Olympic rings, like for my for my donut order? And like this business, because Krispy Kreme donuts like bent over backwards to like make this happen for this guy, all because he asked. And through that process of doing things where he thought he was going to get a huge no, he ended up getting these yeses. Knock on some random door. Hey, can I like play soccer in your backyard? And then he like filmed these things happening, and people would be like, the guy would answer the door and be like, okay. You know, but he just found like you're not gonna know whether the answer is yes unless you're willing to put yourself out there and ask. And we fear the rejection so much. We fear the no. Like we fear the no so much. And so like whether it's asking for a mentor or asking for the business, or like, I mean, we just gotta ask.
Right. Yeah. And so the part B to that answer is, I'm thinking that 2020 would be the year to be like, okay, I'm gonna focus on Dan. Like, what do I need to do to improve myself, and to be able to go through rejections, and to be able to go through whatever, like, you know. So, just trying to fix myself, you know, not literally this upcoming year, but so, and hopefully out of that, you know, so we're gonna be able to go through some stuff like that.
Okay, but so like, what
really good suggestions.
I mean, what's on your, so as you're looking at 2020, I mean, what are the steps that you think you're going to be taking?
Excuse me. I think that the rejection is a big part of it. Just being able to be okay with just, you know, I guess you just said it, like, you know, to get the rejection thing. So in that encompasses like sales and all that stuff. So just being a little more okay with myself, just kind of appreciating myself, I guess, a little more, just being, the 25%, I don't know why LinkedIn is so off, but 25% of the profits actually goes to suicide prevention and mental health. And in many ways, that's a cause because really it's myself, you know, like, so I'm struggling with it. So I'm like, well, let me make a big deal about this, you know? So, but not only myself, like it also happened because in 2017, a kid, like a teenager from my church, decided to take his life, and I was really involved with. Well, I was about to start getting involved with that group. It sucks because like the week after I was scheduled to start getting really involved with them, and I just saw how devastated everybody was. And he probably did it because he thought nobody cared about him and all of that stuff. You know, he probably thought he was a burden, all of that. And here we are, everybody who's left behind is like, wow, this is really hurtful. You know,
yeah, it's
we want to. Had we known, we would have helped. You know, kind of thing. So. So that's kind of what triggered me to be like, okay, this is going to be the cause that we're going to go after. And you know, I've struggled with that, you know, for a while too. So as I'm saying, like 2020, I'm hoping will be, for me personally, I think it's going to be a year to kind of like try to invest in myself, and hopefully we can have some future updates, you know, so that things are going better and all that stuff, and people will be able to so a little value to whoever's listening to this, that maybe it's worth, you know, taking time to invest in yourself. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So what primary way or method are you going to invest in yourself?
Counseling, I think it's a big part of it. Maybe some of these retreats that you go to, kind of like just be away for a week or so, and you know, just kind of see where, I don't know, where things could be better. But then just reading books like about, you know, just more psychology, kind of like, you know, one of these self-improving kind of books that I've always been like, oh, this stuff is so lame. I don't want to, I'm not going to be dealing with this. But now I'm like, well, I guess now I see why there's, you know, why people do this. You know, there's some value to it. So yeah. I think that's kind of, at least for right now, that's the roadmap. My goal is to spend the next 2 months just figuring it out, what the answer to that question essentially is. Like, what does it look like for me to work on in 2020, and then put into action. You know? If
there was somebody who was interested in partnering up, providing mentorship, you want them to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really easy to find me. We can put the contacts in different places, but yeah, absolutely. I would like to get some of that. Yeah.
Cool. What would you say?
I'm sorry this episode is so down.
No, it's not.
I feel like this is like bringing the energy down.
I actually really appreciate you sharing all that, because I think it definitely plays in a lot of different ways for a lot of people.
There's so many lessons here, and I knew that that's what would happen. Is, you know, like you get on here, you start talking. I never know which direction it's going to go, but I did know that you were like, I mean, you were transparent with me about some of the challenges that you were facing, and I'm like, dude, like, let's talk about them. Like, let's be real, man. That's what makes it so valuable. Is like, there's gonna be plenty of people who can completely empathize with you, and then there's gonna be a lot of people who are like, dude, I like this guy, like, let's go, let's weFooz it up. You know, and like those are the things that can happen through a platform like this. And again, like, going back to the things that I'm thankful for, like, I'm thankful that like we have the opportunity to provide that kind of the opportunity for somebody else, or just create that kind of impact. You know, I'm more than willing to offer some of my time and mentorship. I mean, I am not an expert at all. Like, I'm constantly seeking mentorship from others. And you know, like, but I do have 15 years of experience. I do, like, when I hear things that are like from the marketing side or from the building a community side, I think those are things that I've done well. And not only me, but like, I mean, I'll donate some of Mike's time. I can do that. I can do that, right?
No,
but like,
I was
mean,
gonna say you gotta stop giving yourself, and then you're not giving yourself anymore. You're giving Mike now.
You know, in fact, it's funny that you just said that, because I think a lot of times we default to giving money, and when I hear like whether it's 10% of revenue or 25% of profit, like I hear like that's a very honorable thing, but I'm like, all right, like why not like remove all of that? And at this stage of like where you're at in your business, like, okay, maybe you donate one event a month, right? And you come out and you do just that event for free for some organization or cause, right? Like you like literally budget the time that you're going to be charitable with, so that way we can ensure that, hey, you have a business that is making money on the other weekends and is, or you know, the other days of the month, and is going to be profitable. That way you can ensure that this lives on for a long time. And as from a mentor standpoint, that's advice that I'd be like, let's figure out ways that we can donate our time versus our actual money, so that we have a business and that we can take some money home for the wife and the kids, right? So because that family time is just, I mean, it's just super valuable, and you're starting to realize that, right? Because this is taking time away, and it's like, man, like what can I do? You know, going back to the cash flow quadrant, to Rich Dad Poor Dad, you know, like that book. I mean, cash flow quadrant, you talk about business systems. I mean, you have a business system when you can leave your business for a year and it's operating better without you and putting money in your pocket.
Right, yeah.
Like that would be a pretty sweet thing, right? Because then you could like travel with your family for an entire year and still have an income. Like that would be amazing, right? And we don't think we don't spend enough time really creating the structure and the processes and the foundation to support that, because I think a lot of the times even our own heart can get in the way. And I can completely empathize with that, because I feel like we're very much the same way. It's like, all right, like I want to support this. I want to get, you know, but I guarantee that if we focus on the foundation and the structure, it ensures that our businesses are going to be there for, are going to be sustainable, be there for a very long time, to where we'll always be able to donate every single year. And so, you know, that's my tip of the day, I guess. Like, I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert. That's my own personal opinion and feelings on the subject, but you know, it's just that.
Yeah. I think the budgeting aspect of that is super important, because I can tell you, before we used to do that, it's just, you want to say yes to everybody. That's the hard part of saying no, is it becomes very much more of a human thing. But if you've got a budget, it's easier to stick to a plan and allocate it and say, you know, unfortunately, no, we're out of budget. We've already dedicated that. And then it becomes a little bit easier to say no for yourself, knowing that you're sticking to a plan that you put in place with logic, than the irrationality of just kind of going willy-nilly with whether you say yes or no, or does it feel right, does it feel not right, that kind of thing. So budgeting that time or budgeting that budget, how much you're going to spend, your time, that kind of thing, I think is critical.
And I guess 1% of 1 million is probably better than 50% of 1,000.
Probably.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. What would you say? I mean, in this roller coaster of a journey, what would you say has been the biggest lesson for you?
As I said, I had that right here. I was like, they're gonna ask me this.
What, you knew I was going to ask you that?
Yes.
Like, wrote it down?
Yeah, so...
Love the preparation.
Right?
Yeah, so I had it written differently. But I think that it's finding that someone to kind of, to working with a team. I think that's one big lesson that I held back way too much on that, to doing everything myself. Which kind of goes back to the mentoring and, you know, the team thing. But I would say that even bigger than that, I focused a lot on the product, because again, that's my passion. That's what I'm excited about, right? And both the physical product, which is the game itself, we've gone through a few versions of it. And to this day, I still have improvements that I do on it. And so both that and the product of, here's the event that we put on, and enough on sales, on just picking up the phone and making calls. I went through a ton of networking events and try to like get the exposure that way, but not necessarily like, let me try to like really focus on sales.
Yeah.
So I would say that's kind of where if there's anybody out there who's listening to this and they have this idea and they're really passionate about whatever the product is, whatever they're doing, whatever the mission of the thing is, we got to think that, at the end of the day, without sales, it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I would say that's kind of the biggest lesson that I need to learn it.
From the marketing standpoint, I think this is like, I think this would be awesome as just a content creation play. I mean, simply, I mean, I'm trying to picture you announcing these tournaments, or like out there like literally announcing it. And I think if you actually created content like showing that and like showing the individual games and had teams, and like I could see the thumbnails like on YouTube being like this team versus this team,
right.
You know what I mean? And then like you have like the game like recorded, and and then you're there announcing it. Right. I mean, I could see this absolutely being like, and then like taking the I would turn it into my own mini version of the NFL or any other college football, whatever. I mean, I would like pull the highlights from the video and put the highlights on my Instagram, and like, I mean, I could completely brainstorm a ton of cool like content create ideas, which would then only further promote and show off what it is you do.
Yeah, it's the whole chicken and the egg thing.
That phrase, I swear. That phrase comes up so much in my life, like from this guy.
Do you market first, and then so do you spend the money into marketing so that it can grow, or because without marketing it can grow, but then without without money you can't you can't pay for marketing kind of thing. So
again, I'm gonna go back to the time. Like, because I'm guaranteeing you have a phone that has a camera on it, right? And I think so many people get super wrapped up into the production value, or like I could get a tripod. I could while you're there announcing it, I could hold my phone and record the game. It might not be the best production, and it's not going to be as cool as the drone flying over it. I get that, right?
The weFooz blimp.
But I think like if you really like carved out a couple hours in the schedule once a week and said, all right, this is when I'm going to upload this footage. I'm going to upload it to YouTube. I'm going to put this video on YouTube, and then like pull these little clips out, and I'm going to put these particular clips on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like, I think just carving out the time, sure, it'd be great to be able to promote it a little bit and put it in front of more eyeballs. But I think I know that if you do that consistently, that it will gain more and more traction each week. It's just being dedicated to it, right? But again, like, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. I could talk marketing for the next 6 hours.
Yeah, another top of the hour here.
But I think
hour 2 of the podcast.
But I just know that like there's definitely a cool content play there, and I think if you gamify it, which is what the spike ball people did, right? Like I don't know the ins and outs of that story, but they built a community and they did tournaments, and I'm sure there's a ton of video content, showing off the tournaments, showing off the game, whatever, to get people excited about it. And it's like, dude, oh my gosh, like, what is this? Like, I want to go do this. Where can I do this at? And
ESPN shared some highlights from a tournament the other day that was like this radical play, like serious spike ball and stuff. It was wow, that's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, it's really cool to see their progression. I'm like, okay, I can, try to.
You could totally do that. If you really wanted to do it, you could do it.
I mean, there's cornhole on ESPN now.
Yeah,
there is. Yeah,
seriously. So they on spike ball, it's really cool to see them grow. Like once they went to Shark Tank, and just boom, how much they've exploded. But anyway, so
but my issue with
we don't need to go there. Like I 100% agree with you. Just right here, we don't need to reach 100 million people yet.
Yeah, I don't want people to think that like whether it's Shark Tank or anything else that's like the the escape or the like,
No.
you know, like that everybody's waiting for that moment. Right. Like you can build a really great business and build community and build content, and you can do that without Shark Tank.
Right. and for that note, like nobody on Shark Tank would take him if they didn't have traction.
Right.
Right. So they're already going.
So they were already
somewhere,
doing something right. So cool. Where can everybody contact you?
Yeah, really easy at Human Foosball. On the website, it's humanfoosball.com. And I think you can misspell it in different ways. And it will still redirect. I bought a bunch of different domains because people always misspell how to write foosball. So just do that, or just Google Human Foosball. WEFOOZ, weFooz, and then definitely it's going to be the top result. Same thing, Facebook, Instagram. I have other accounts that don't get used, like Twitter, Snapchat. It's all there. So it's all waiting for someone who's really good at marketing to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I know a guy.
All right, so how'd you think this went?
I think this is great. I'm feeling very naked right now, very exposed, but I think it's good. I think that one thing that like that I have a hard time with is kind of, as I said, like we hear people who go through struggle, but we only hear once it's already behind them. And maybe for someone out there, there's going to be some value in listening to, okay, here's where it is, and then if they kind of follow what's going on with weFooz or myself, and hopefully one day we'll grow, and then that could be inspiring or something. I don't know. But I feel uber vulnerable right now.
And I appreciate you being open and sharing the hardships and that side of the story, and because I know it's not an easy thing to do, and I know because I do it all the time. Like I'm again, probably not as much as we should, because we try to paint this picture, not like we as in like we, but we as a whole, as a community, as entrepreneurs, like we very much want to show off the good, right? Mm-hmm. We want to be excited about the good, but still, like, when you can be vulnerable and like show the hardships. And I had a blog post actually once that I wrote that was very, very, very heartfelt, and I don't really write to begin with. And so the fact that I even wrote a blog was kind of a miracle in itself. But I wrote it, and it like got shared several times, and even with some like pretty big entrepreneurs in the community, and people are like, this is what it's like. This is the truth. This is the real deal.
You never know what people are going to relate to and what they're going to connect to. And I think that authenticity and transparency and stuff, there's going to be somebody, like I connect to stuff like that on a different level. There's going to be plenty of listeners that do. So definitely find a lot of value in that.
Yeah. So thanks for being open and for being willing to share your story. I think there's a ton of lessons, and where I knew like you were all worried about bringing value, I think you brought so much value. And I actually if there's anything that I worry about is like the audience being like, Collin, like you're like
you hate on the nonprofit, you hate on the charitable donations,
you're like tearing into story too much. And like no, like I knew that you would be willing to discuss it, and I mean. And even when I invited you on, you were telling me that, you were going through some of these hardships. And I'm like, dude, if you're open to it, like, let's just talk about it, man. Let's just talk about it. And on the nonprofit thing, like, again, I want to be very, very clear because I feel like New Scooters for Less and myself and like everything that we're doing is very, very, very generous. And I want to continue to be very generous. I just want to ensure that like we're not giving the businesses away in order to be generous. It is a balance and does take budgeting. So don't be upset with anything that I say.
At Collin Austin, is that what they can find you?
Message me directly, please. Again, I'm just super grateful. Thank you so much for coming on. World, Gainesville, everybody who listens to this podcast, thank you so much for your support going into Thanksgiving week. I mean, there's just a lot to be thankful for, and I can speak for myself and for Michael and for the entire crew here. We are super, super, super thankful for you guys and for your support and everything that you're doing for this podcast. I just get so amped thinking about the future. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And that's it. Last words?
I echo all of that.
Cool.
Thank you for being here. Thankful for our listeners. And
can we leave some of the sadness behind and just do a big wrap up here?
Yeah. This is the WHOA GNV podcast, the podcast bringing you businesses and individuals that make you go, whoa.
Woo!
There it is. We'll see you later. Bye.
Thank you.